know each other a little bit who's on the call.
Thank you. We will do that. We will call the meeting to order and we will rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hi, Jeannie.
Hi.
Okay. Once again, David, do you have a written copy? You can help me. My screen gets.
Yeah. So I wonder if, Steve, if it would be easiest to maybe go through, we know we have some organizations that are represented with multiple people. And so I wonder if we could go through that list and then somebody could maybe introduce those folks from the various schools, cities, et cetera. And then I know we have some interested citizens and some others, and we could maybe pick them up at the end, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. We'll start out with East Central Schools. I see Andy. You want to take on that role, Andy?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for putting this together, everybody. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Andy Almost from East Central Schools. So just make sure I get everybody. We have Jeanette Kester from our board online, Presley from our school board, Rich Thompson. Did I miss anybody from East Central? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Hinckley Finlayson.
Hi, I'm Rob Prater, superintendent with Hinckley Finlayson Schools, and we also have Angela Grahowski, school board member, and we're not sure if she's on yet, Mary Ellen Von Ruden, school board member.
And I know we have Pine City Schools. Kurt Trigestad texted me that he's in a he lives in Pine City, but he has no internet service at his place, so he is listening. But if there's somebody else from Pine City Schools that wishes to introduce themselves, go ahead. That takes care of all the schools, I do believe.
No, I'm sorry. I'm Bill Peel. I'm the superintendent of Will River Schools.
Oh, hi, Bill.
Up north. Yeah, hi.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'm the only one in attendance from our school. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We have some township officers here. Glenn, go ahead. We know Glenn is there, and he's in St. Martin. That's not the Duxbury store in the background. Anybody else from the Township Officers Association? Any other township officers that are on the call? All right, we'll go to the city of Pine City.
Mary Kay Sloan, and I don't know, is Leslie on here? I haven't seen her.
I have not seen her either.
Okay. And then Brian is no longer on the council, but close enough to to be called.
Awesome. Awesome. Anybody from the city of Hinckley?
Tim Burkhart, City of Hinckley, president of the Minnesota Association of Small Cities also.
Thank you, Tim. Sandstone, I see Kathy.
Hi, Pete Spartans is here. Kathy's somewhere in this maze of faces.
Okay.
And Val Palmer is here with me, council member.
Thank you. Any other cities represented? Let's see. Individuals. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm Wendy Walberg, and I'm representing Pine Technical and Community College, and along with me is Kathy Reed.
Thank you very much.
I'm Mark Shefford. I live on the east side of Cross Lake.
Thanks for coming, Mark.
You're welcome.
I see a few.
I'm Barb Vidine, and I'm from CEC.
Thank you, Barb.
I'm Amy Will, and I work with Pine County Court Administration, and I'm just here to listen as more and more of our hearings are. So this affects a lot of the Pine County residents and the courts and how we do business now. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Rod Greeter, University of Minnesota Extension.
Thank you.
Jody Plessner, I'm Human Services.
Thank you.
I'm Josh Asp, and I'm with Wellia Health.
Josh, I didn't hear what you were.
I got some feedback on that, but I'm with Wellia Health.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Anybody, let's see, who else we have? East Central Energy.
Good morning, everyone. Justin Johns, President and CEO of East Central Energy, and we also have Ty Hoagland, our CIO, online. So happy to be here.
Thanks for taking part today. Who else?
Ryan. I lead group small business owner and clerk for Sandstone Township.
Thank you. You were breaking up, Elaine, but I think we got the gist of it. Becky?
Becky Schuler, Executive Director for the Pine City Area Chamber of Commerce.
Who else we missing? Becky Laurie. You're muted, Becky. Becky, you're muted.
Okay, here I am.
All right.
Okay, thanks for unmuting me. I suppose I'm representing businesses as a business owner in Northern Pine County, and then I also serve on the Minnesota Rural Broadband.
Thank you.
And what a great group.
Yes. I see Don Hickman from the Initiative Foundation.
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Very good. I was struggling to get to turn it off. Don Hickman from the Initiative Foundation, and we're very interested in your investigation of the issue. This is grant eligible if you decide to go forward.
Thank you. Who else do we have?
Good morning, Commissioner Hallen. This is Sheena Matures from Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe.
Well, thank you.
And Jason Rarick, sorry I was a touch late. The meeting ran long, but we're glad to be here. Hopefully can stay on for about half hour to 45 minutes with you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dustin Ganz. I'm with Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures. So we're, I believe, one of the largest employers in Pine County. So we're ready, willing, and happy to be at the table.
Thanks, Dustin, for being here.
Morning, Representative Nathan Nelson here, and I joined a few minutes late, but I've got about half an hour, 45 minutes, just like the senator. So thanks for hosting this.
Thanks, Representative.
Hi, everybody. This is Ida Rukavina. I'm the Regional Outreach Director with Senator Amy Klobuchar. And I also have my coworker, Chuck Ackerman, from the southern part of the state, but he works on broadband as well. So happy to be here.
Thanks, Ida. I saw you earlier, but then your pictures moved around. I think, is that everybody?
Well, Kimberly Bever, community member.
Thanks, Kimberly. If somebody else joins, don't feel shy about introducing yourselves. In the interest of time, we all probably have a story to tell about where we are with broadband and our frustrations and our triumphs and our whatever. But I think we'll save that for a later date, possibly not too far in the distant future when we can all gather with our masks off and have a nice sit around the room chit chat, because Pine County has taken some stabs at furthering broadband throughout the years. I've been on the board for 13 years or so, and when I was first on the board, I came fresh off a job that did distance learning dating back to the early 80s, and so I thought, this is a piece of cake. This would be the simplest thing I've ever done as a county commissioner, and here we are a dozen years later. In some ways further behind than we were a dozen years ago, because the demands that people have for broadband now are so much greater. And it shows up in a lot of ways when people try to work from home, when their kids are home. We all know those stories. So I've known Bill Coleman for years and years and years, and Bill has kind of become the resident expert in the Midwest on broadband deployments and how we get from being, I believe the last I saw, we're ranked 84th in the state of Minnesota out of 87 counties. We don't like being in that end of the statistical calendar, so we know we can do better than that. We have done some work, like I said, and our GIS people pulled up some information that says, you know, about 85% of our constituents live within 10 miles of either side of 35. So maybe we can use that and leverage that. And then if you take Highway 48, Highway 70, some of the main highways off of the freeway, we pick up a huge, another percentage of population. So I'm coming here with a way open mind. I know we have people that are struggling with their hotspots, trying to get by. I know we have people that are on the new low orbit satellite system as kind of guinea pigs, not so much guinea pigs, but test cases, and they are extremely happy with what they have. We have people on fixed wireless systems. We have people as cable modem service, and so we have a lot of systems. Bill will talk about what it needs to be to have broadband going into the future. So I think as we move through this process, if we all just keep an open mind and try to imagine what the other possibilities are, we want our people living in our county to have every opportunity that other people have. I know Senator Rarick and Representative Nelson need to leave fairly soon. So if they have any words they would like to pass on, maybe we do that right now before we get into Bill's presentation.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us to this. You know, just like Commissioner Hallen said, you know, when I first got into the legislature and thought getting broadband funding would be something that's easy and, you know, everybody agrees with, yet the amount that we can get out there is not making much of a dent in the situation. And I've been working with folks to try to change the way that goes, is maybe used instead of needing to partner with a provider, let a township or a city develop their own plan and then present that and get a grant that way. A number of other ideas that have been put out there. So I appreciate this group coming together to put some more ideas out there and see what we can come up with and try to help Pine County move forward. We are one of the lowest served areas in the state. And we need to change that.
And just kind of the Representative Nathan Nelson here, just kind of add on to that. Funding is needed, and the next issue is how do we do this? Do we do this, hard line? Do we do this? It's the how is the hard part, and that's what I think everybody gets stuck in the weeds about. But getting the funding is becomes the issue because we get into arguing what's the best way to do. We go with landlines, fiber, is low orbit satellite, is that the future? What is the best way? And and I think that it's going to be a combination of multiple ways that really make sense. Our higher density population areas, which we don't have a lot of in Pine County, but that's going to be areas that are best served with a fixed service, whereas our more rural areas, 5G or low orbit satellites could very possibly be the best thing. So it's really going to be part of everybody coming together to put a plan together that will work for what's best in Pine County and move us out of 84th place and go to, lower on the number and not higher.
Yes, I think it's certainly an obtainable goal. So, Bill Coleman, are you up, ready?
I am, thank you.
All right.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Coleman, and I'm happy to be with you today. And I've been working on rural broadband and economic development for many years. I was started one of my professional jobs early was the East Central Regional Development Commission back in the mid 80s. So I've been tromping around East Central Minnesota and the rest of rural Minnesota for the last 30 years or so, certainly excluding this last year, sitting at my desk here doing these kind of meetings. Thanks so much for joining today. Broadband has never been more important. We've seen that. You see a large number of school districts on the call today, healthcare providers, small business, manufacturers, information companies, local governments. And we've seen so many things shift to electronic platforms in the last year, things that we had talked about for many years, but nothing like a crisis to spur kind of innovation. And so my goal today is to talk about broadband and what's happening kind of with different technologies, what other communities and counties are doing to move up that list on the broadband rankings and so on. So I'll look forward to a good conversation, and we'll have time at the end definitely for that. but it's never really been more complicated for community leaders today than it's been in the past. And some of that is policy direction with so much attention on broadband. There's dollars coming from different places for different purposes. There's new technologies with low Earth orbit satellites that are kind of throwing some uncertainty into what is the proper path. And so my goal today is to help you understand the issue better and think about your next steps to address this issue, certainly not to solve it today. When we think about broadband, we think a lot of times we just think about the download speed. And that certainly is important, and that's measured in megabits and now in gigabits, which is thousands of megabits. And download speed is certainly important. We see residential 10 gigabit service now available in Minneapolis over fiber optics. And gigabit service both through fiber optics and cable modems increasingly available, certainly in East Central Minnesota through Midco and SCI provide gigabit level cable modem service. But really increasingly important now is this upload speed. The ability to have video conferences like today's requires both a high download and upload. We see people working from home, sending large files. We see people backing up everything they do in the cloud with Apple products and Dropbox and things of that nature. Certainly in Pine County, affordability is going to be a critical issue. It doesn't do any good to have a system that costs people $400 a month if people don't have $100 a month for internet. And so, and for many people, the idea of, it's a bag of groceries or the internet service for the month. And so people are making hard choices on affordability. And just now we've seen the federal government in the end of the year stimulus program create an emergency broadband finance program for people. Once you begin to depend on broadband, reliability becomes critical. You need to have it for sales meetings and just to keep your network up. Certainly the more tech savvy and more tech dependent you are, the reliability becomes very important. Mobility, everyone wants to have at least 2 devices on their bodies at all time, maybe a tablet, maybe a phone. And so we know that this wireless revolution is a big part of broadband situation. And then finally, latency, and that's really the delay between the time you send a signal and it gets back to you. And that's been the biggest issue with satellite service over the years that precludes people from really using video conferencing like this very effectively. You can listen in, you can kind of participate, but it's kind of on mute for a second or two, it seems, every time somebody talks or stops talking. But this low Earth orbit satellite now is changing some of that and really cut that latency down. And so that's holds great promise for that technology. But world challenges, and Commissioner Hallen talked about this, low population densities. The cost can really vary by your soils and geography. Up in Lake County, Cook County, Rock County, that certainly is a tough place to build networks. Places with large wetlands can also be problematic. If you're in Sherburne County, not that many trees, it's all sand. A lot easier to build fiber to the home in a place like that. We know that these grants are complicated. As I mentioned, we've had the state broadband program. A lot of people aren't too happy right now with that program because of the way they interacted with these federal rural develop or digital opportunity fund dollars that were just awarded. And so it does get to be complicated, not only for communities as consumers and providers as consumers of these grants, but also for the people who are designing and implementing them. We know that the incumbents always resist. There's never enough market for one provider to invest, but the second a community wants to invest and starts making a move that way, the providers find the dollars to come in and try and cut them off at the pass. And so we know that some providers resist because it's just hard to make money as a publicly traded company in a rural place like Pine County. If it's a $5,000 to $10,000 per house to extend fiber optics to a property, you know, how many months at $100 a month to get that back? And so Wall Street requires a much higher rate of return for these infrastructure investments. And that's why these companies have not made them. They're obligated to look out for their shareholders, not so much for their customers. And so that's a real challenge for the incumbent providers. They're not in a easy place to be. Broadband maps are often criticized. The broadband maps that the federal government and the state puts out are based on the data that providers give them. So they tend to be a little optimistic. The other thing with the federal dollar or maps is that if one house in a census block is served at 25 megabits down and 3 megabits up, the entire census block is considered served. So in Pine County, you may have census blocks that are miles across. And so if one house in a corner has service, on the map that shows like everyone has service. And that's a big challenge. And then just digital equity considerations. And we know the school districts have struggled with this. You know, we used to kind of affectionately just call it the homework gap. And kids would, you know, have to go to the library or McDonald's, or they'd have to stay after school to do their homework because they didn't have internet at home. Now with everyone at home, you know, these challenges are just magnified. And again, some of that is financial, and some of that is just services are not available. So the federal standard now for broadband is 25 megabits down and 3 up. So that if you have that, they think that you're served. If you have less than 25 down and 3 up, you really don't have broadband. We see some providers saying, oh, we offer a 10 megabit broadband service. That's not really, it's kind of like near beer, right? Like 3-2 beer. It's not quite broadband. Our state goals are 25 down, 3 up by 2022. I really focus on this other one, 100 down and 20 up by 2026. And our state broadband task force this year said next year they are really going to tackle this a new broadband speed goal. So that will be very interesting to see. And it, you know, from 100 by 20, you can only go to, you know, 100 or several hundred. And I think we're going to see more emphasis on symmetric speeds, both same speed up and down in this new round. But this 100 by 20 is a challenging goal for providers if their networks are not up to it. We are seeing a revolution in wireless, and especially out on the prairie, we're seeing a lot of fixed wireless where the towers have fiber optic to the tower, and they can deliver 50 megabits by 25 relatively easily, and higher speeds as well. We see some doing 100 by 50 with wireless. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, the capabilities and challenges with that. And we know with cellular, if you looked at the state maps, it says, oh, it's everyone's got great wireless service, data services, but you don't have to drive around too far to recognize that cellular service is highly variable. And parts of Pine County probably have pretty miserable cellular service. And the stories of people standing on rocks and so at the end of their driveway trying to get a signal is not unusual. And then the marketplace, as opposed to the standards, we're seeing that this gigabit now is widely available. That used to be something extraordinary, but now it's many providers offer this, and it's especially the symmetrical service over fiber is available. Cable companies, when they offer a gigabit service, their upload speed is kind of a measly 50 megabits per second. Although that's a, there aren't many people that could really wear that out. So it's a high quality service there that can do most anything. But people who are really reliant on the telephone company lines out in the countryside are likely to have much less than 25 megabits speed. And as a matter of fact, the bigger companies are now abandoning these copper networks. AT&T has suspended sales of their DSL service. So I'm working in Illinois now, even in Chicago, people are left with one choice, the cable company, because the phone company has gotten out of the DSL business because it's kind of a worn out technology. So now a little more detail about the fiber to the home. It's really unlimited capacity. Now the 10 gigabit service is in place to some homes. It's symmetrical, high speed up and down. It's really reliable, low cost to maintain. And that's why for some companies, they make that move, get rid of their old copper networks, because it is the fiber just really works. It's a really low maintenance thing. Long life, 30 to 50 years on the fiber. Some people use the phrase future proof. And, the future is a long time. But if we think about a generational investment, fiber is certainly that. We also know that if you want high quality wireless, that most of its path goes over fiber optics. All the towers are for the cellular networks are connected by fiber, and so that wireless service only goes so far. And really, as I listen to some industry people, they talk about fiber to the antenna, whether that's your wireless router in your home or whether that's a cell tower. But it is expensive. You could expect, if you on a back of the envelope expense for Pine County to do the entire county, it would exceed $10,000 a house. At the same time, I like to joke that's kind of the price of an old used lawn boat. So it's not exactly, or a John Deere lawn tractor. So it's not exactly exorbitant price, but when you total it up for Pine County, it would be a big number. And then it takes time to build. Again, these telephone networks, you can see here the map on the right-hand side. There's a study I did over in Chisago Lakes area when the CenturyLink and Frontier were receiving what was known as CAF2 funds, Connect America Fund. And they were required to build only to a 10 megabit standard. You can see here, they put in a lot of electronics, fiber connected electronics through the areas, but the areas in red were the only thing that, in the red circles, that were able to get 25 megabits down and 3 up after the federal investment. So you can see that leaves, more than half of that land area with something less. Once you're over at 2 miles away from the electronics with DSL service, you're going to be under that 10 megabit service. And so that is not really worth that much in today's marketplace. As I mentioned, cable networks, they have fiber to the node as their primary use of technology. The download capacity to a gig. It's certainly widely available in urbanized area throughout East Central Minnesota. And then they're promising now using new technology to do 10 gigabit service and symmetrical. So I never doubt the ability of engineers to push information up and down, whether through the air or over a wire. Again, it's non-symmetrical, and usually those upload speeds are limited to 10 to 20% of download speed. So my own Comcast cable modem is 180 megabits down, but only 23 megabits up. Cable companies are profitable and they like to make money. And so what I've seen with state grants where they've applied, generally they're looking for a more significant subsidy than we'll just say a rural telephone cooperative to extend out in the rural countryside. They're more likely to edge out from a city where they're already providing cable and internet service rather than take on an entire county or an entire township. Cellular, finally, we've implemented all of the 4G standard. 5G is certainly coming, but 5G is in some ways like DSL service. It's really distance limiting, up to 1,000 feet. When we talk about the gigabit 5G, that can only go about 1,000 feet, which is the average length of a driveway, I think, in Pine County, in northern Pine County. So that promise of 5G for wireless or for rural is really some distance away. Unless you're thinking more about, and this is illustrated in the difference between the Verizon ads on television and the T-Mobile ads. Verizon uses very high frequency transmitters that can carry a lot of information, but only a very short distance. T-Mobile is using more of a mid-band spectrum for what they call 5G, and that can go several miles. And so, but much slower speeds, much more likely to be in that 50 megabit category rather than gigabit. So the average speed last quarter for cellular data was 35 megabits down. We know that it's not available everywhere. It can be relatively expensive when they're paying for your data by the gigabyte. And then, of course, they have data limits and slowdown. So watch out for those asterisks when you're buying cellular service because there's a lot of limitations. I've mentioned fiber-fed towers on fixed wireless. It's quick to deploy, inexpensive to deploy, but it doesn't work very good in a forest, and especially for your namesake, the pine trees tend to eat wireless signals. The equipment doesn't last very long, much higher operating costs, and we know that, again, distance is an enemy on those signals. The satellite, it is available everywhere. The speeds have improved to 25.3 on the high Earth satellites. The low Earth, I'm hearing more and more positive results on the Starlink program. You know, right now it's $500 to sign up for that, and I think it's $100 a month. Right now there are no bandwidth caps on that, but it's also in the testing phase, and so there aren't that many customers compared to the existing capacity. So it'll be interesting to see how well that holds up in terms of the once they get more customers on the system. But people are getting over 100 megabit service using that, and they say the latency is tolerable. So it's a new era. There's no doubt about it for the satellite service. And so now does anyone have any questions?
What are some of the that are using a low band satellite? This is Glenn Williamson.
Glenn, could you say that again?
What are some of the companies that are using that low band satellite?
Well, so Starlink, I think, is the only one that's in operation.
Okay.
And so the others are on their way. There's, I think, 2 other ones, and their names escape me right now. And so it's going to get awfully crowded up there in space as well. I saw just the other day, astronomers were complaining because all those Musk satellites are reflecting sunlight. So it's really ruining space pictures, which I don't think astronomers are going to win that argument, but they're something that Musk has said he's going to work on. But thanks for that question, Glenn.
Thank you.
Have any studies been done with regard to people that have little or no access to cell service as well as broadband service?
Well, I think
like usually you would get one or the other.
You know, I think the the people who have poor cell service are people who live in very low density areas off of highways, that are far, there's, off on the county road or township services. So in many ways, they have a double whammy that they don't have the wired option, nor do they have the cellular option. If you look at the state broadband maps for the cellular data, the companies really claim that they serve the entire state with 2 or 3 pockets of lack of coverage. But we just know that if you turn right anywhere off I-35 and go east into Pine County, your service is likely to get worse and worse and worse. So I'm sure you folks are aware of that. But that is where people do not have anything. And some of that, again, is whether it's access or affordability, just a tremendous reliance on public Wi-Fi, libraries, schools. And of course, during the pandemic, all that has been very limited, much more internet in cars. We've seen school districts do a lot of providing Wi-Fi hotspots, which talking to school coordinators may or may not work. They may have to buy them from several different providers, depending on where people live. So it gets to be a real challenge for folks trying to overcome that. This is the state broadband map, and this shows the areas that are eligible for grants. And so in this case, green means go, and those are areas, especially out in the countryside, all that is places that have fiber to the home. Almost all of that is provided by rural telephone cooperatives, or now in some cases electric cooperatives, that realize that they can make an investment for 10 or 15 years with fiber. And as cooperatives, they can make this pay because they don't need the higher return on investment. They're more patient with their capital and so on. You can see up in Lake County there along North Shore, that was a county initiative. They, during the federal stimulus in 2009, received a big loan to provide fiber to the home. That was fiercely fought by the incumbent providers and was delayed, and all kinds of things went wrong. They ended up essentially giving back the network to the federal government, to the USDA, because of the loans. But now that's being operated by a private carrier. So if you talk to their county commissioners, they're happy they did it. It gave them a lot of gray hairs along the way. But if you look at the purple areas, those are areas covered with DSL service. In the state scheme, they're considered underserved. And they have between 25 down and 100 megabits down. And more likely that most of those are on the closer to that 25 megabit side than they are to the 100 megabit side. And those areas are eligible, but not a priority for state grants. And then the red area, of which you can see, and I'll look here, show you here, Pine County is primarily red. So you can see the areas in that are served by cable modems. That would be the green areas. And then you can see the purple areas that are DSL service by either CenturyLink or Frontier. And then large areas of red area. Certainly some of those places, not many people live, but you can see there's quite a bit of road network in these other places that are considered unserved, and especially in that southern part of the county. One of the things that it's critical to be able to have is a partner. In a lot of communities, like to partner with a private telecom provider. And we have not seen that many kind of projects by CenturyLink or Frontier using the state grants. They both done some, but not many. And to get somebody new to come in, you're kind of far away from many of the telephone cooperatives that have done most of the expansion and the rest of rural Minnesota. But red, we think about all the people now. We talk about people leaving the Twin Cities to be able to work from home in their cabins or lake places, and are deciding to move out of the Twin Cities and find a year-round residence and be able to work from home. Those people are really looking for a high-quality broadband service. And so Pine County is really missing out on opportunities to attract additional people to the community. Justin?
Yeah, Bill, I was just wondering, do you have any data about the percentage of the population of Pine County that's within the red area versus the purple and green?
I don't, but I suspect that the Pine County GIS could crank that number out. Any reflections from any?
Yeah, we'd have that, Justin, and I'm thinking it's the density is along our major, like the freeway and major trunk highways, and you get almost to 85% of the populated county lives within 5 or 10 miles of either side of those major trunk highways.
Be pretty fair to say then that 85% of the population is in a more competitive environment in terms of, speeds and pricing and things like that.
Yeah, and I might be off a little bit on the 85%, but I think I'm in the ballpark.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The other thing that's happened since I have talked to some contacts at Midco, and they have officially said that in their construction project, there's a portion of the northeast corner of Cross Lake that does not have cable service, and they are going to build that out in the next 18 months. And they also got some federal dollars, and they're going to build out a swath from Rock Creek to the Wisconsin border along Highway 70. And all of their construction going forward is going to be fiber to the premise.
I'll talk about that program here in a minute.
Yep.
So this shows the infrastructure. It's kind of the same map, but so if you look at here's there is no gold, no fiber to the home, or maybe just a little bit there up in the, I don't know where that is. I think that might be a SCI project they got a grant for, the little gold up near the top there. But the mostly cable modem, and then the purple is the DSL, and then the green is fixed wireless. That must be Genesis Wireless, where their service covers. So you can see pretty large areas with very little service. And these areas out in the middle where they have the purple, that was funded through the CAF2 program that was only required to do 10 megabits down and 1 up. Again, the closer you get to those electronics, if you're within 1,000 feet, if you can see them from your house, you can get 30 or 40 megabits, but that doesn't go very far. And then this is a density of unserved. So if you can see colors in this map, and I apologize, they're pretty light, but you can see the darker colors there's more people. So you can see that in the key in the left. So this is a good map of shows, if you're trying to target places to provide broadband services, this is where the people are that don't have service right now. And this is what the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund was, that big FCC program, $16 billion going to be handed out to providers over the next 6 years or so, 10 years, I guess it is. They have to build in the next 6 years. And so a significant portion of Pine County was eligible for those funds. And so you can see the 3 companies that won those projects in Pine County. Purple is SCI up in the northern and central part. You know them, a local company. Midco is green down in the south. Steve talked about. But then all this blue area is a company called LTD Broadband. And they are a company that has traditionally provided wireless services in southern Minnesota and a couple other places. And they bid hyper aggressively in this national auction and won over $1 billion in subsidies. And they're promising fiber to the home construction. There's a lot of skepticism about their ability to do this. They've only got 150 employees. They've never really built fiber to the home projects. They've just submitted their complete information, engineering and financial information to the FCC, and that's under investigation, under review, I'm going to say. as the FCC can judge whether they think they're going to be able to do this, if this is realistic. There's skepticism that they bid so low that they'd never be able to make it work. Most of the telephone cooperatives say that most of the area unserved in Minnesota requires a 50% subsidy for them to finance it over 10 years. And so LTD only bid about $1,500 a household. And most people would say that subsidy would really need to be $4,000 or $5,000 to make this work. So there's kind of an uproar. They won projects in 12 states, I think it is. And there's been a letter that's been signed, and Senator Klobuchar was a real leader on this letter, I know, that went from Congress. And I think they had 150 or so signees on this letter saying, please use caution and lots of due diligence before you approve this, companies' bids. So we don't want to get 3 years in and the company say, oh, sorry, we can't do it. We're going to declare bankruptcy, or, oh, let's use fixed wireless instead. They're promising gigabit level service, which really means fiber optics. And so this is a big controversy right now that's introduced a lot of uncertainty. Most of us had hoped that companies like SCI or Midco or telephone cooperatives across Minnesota or electric co-ops would have won these subsidies, and then we'd have a little more confidence in their ability to deliver. And so it's really brought some chaos to the situation that we don't know when that's going to be resolved. Could be a while. And in telecom, there's always lawsuits. So if you can't win, you sue. So we'll see what happens with that. And so that's kind of my technology overview. And then I just want to spend a few minutes talking about some different deployment models. Do we have any questions? Okay, so usually the usual path for improving broadband, and Pine County has done a lot of this. Talked with existing and prospective providers, maybe conduct feasibility studies. I know that Kanabec and Isanti County have conducted formal feasibility studies. Chisago has done some by Township, and Carlin County has done this. East Central Minnesota is really lagging in their ability to get broadband, and a lot of it is prospective providers or partners, and some of it is just a lack of financial capabilities compared to the cost for the counties. There's not a lot of tax base, and so that makes it a challenge. But to identify the partners, programs, funding sources for match, and then apply for the funding. And that's been the path that many places have used across the state. Those areas that I showed before that were all green in the maps, many of those counties have been very active in funding broadband investments and partnering in projects. In a feasibility study, standard elements are the community survey, looking at technology alternatives and financial analysis, finding the partners. It's really important to have an area broadband vision before you do a feasibility study. Otherwise, you get the study and it says, oh, it's X millions of dollars, and then the study goes up on the shelf and people say, well, we can't fix this, so we're not going to do anything. So if you have a community vision, that really helps drive that forward and brings the community support. We want that study to serve as a decision-making funnel, having active engagement and decision-making as you go through those feasibility studies, so that you're really narrowing your options and coming to a path that there's political and financial support for at the end. Again, if you just receive that study from a consultant, it'll just have all your questions that are yet to be answered. So we like that engagement as a part of that feasibility study. And so broadband is a critical element supporting economic development, social service delivery, school delivery, healthcare, e-commerce. We know that people don't want to live without it. We know that 70% of people say they won't buy a house unless it has great broadband service, and that a house that's got great broadband will sell for 3 to 5% more than a house without it. And so if you think about that, you know, you think, well, it's $10,000 a house, but if an average house costs $250,000 or more, you know, a 5% increase in value, it about pencils out to be cost neutral. We know that the second point is super important, that deciding what's good enough should be made by community leaders. And for far too long in Pine County and your neighboring counties, those decisions have been made by companies that have been bought and sold, and companies like CenturyLink and Frontier that, you know, their decision makers are elsewhere. So now this is too important to leave to somebody else. And then this is a question about, we've seen examples where counties said, well, let's do something, but let's only go part way. And so an example of that would be Martin County. And they partnered with Frontier, and now they, you know, 4 years ago, they built a network that delivers 25 megabits down and 3 up almost everywhere. But 25 down and 3 up, it really isn't adequate anymore for what people are trying to do if you're working from home or going to school from home. And so that's if you're going to go for it, make sure it's a long-term infrastructure investment. It'd be like putting a one-inch layer of asphalt onto a road and say, oh yeah, we fixed that road. That 1 inch isn't going to last very long, and neither will 25/3. And so with that, that's the end of my presentation. And so I would just open it up for discussion. And one thing that the Blandon Foundation, who I work with on a contract basis, and they sponsor my time working for rural communities, is we've seen the challenges facing kind of the bottom 25% of counties, you know, those from 60 to 87 in the rankings, have with broadband services. And so now, starting soon, we're going to pick 4 counties or tribal governments, 4 entities to work intensely with over about a 4-month period to run through a planning process that will lead to some real decisions for the community. And we're calling that Accelerate. And so that program is the grant deadline, or the program application, I think is the 28th, the deadline for that. And I know the county has been talking about this. And so this is an opportunity for the county. If you have a committed team, we require 8 people to say, yes, we'll meet every week for 14 weeks to talk about broadband and move forward on it. It's an open opportunity right now for the county. David?
Yeah, so I don't know, we had a little space on the agenda for some feedback and discussion before we jumped into the next steps. I don't know if, you know, if this is a challenging format with like 50 plus people on the call, but maybe we could take a few minutes just if there were any general comments or questions and that people wanted to add about what they maybe would look for out of that, the county out of the process.
Hey, David.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is Josh Moore. I'd just like to say, Bill, thank you for the presentation. But one of our biggest hurdles, as you can see, when you were talking about providers in the area, not one of our providers even showed up for this meeting. We got over 50 people and not one showed up. And I applaud East Central Electric for joining the meeting, and thank you. Because it's going to take something like that, someone that's not in the game maybe, and help partnering, and we'll see what happens. But to get something like this done, because if our providers that are currently serving us don't want to show up to this meeting, how are we going to get them to take the next step? So.
And Josh, I would just add, we did not specifically reach out and invite providers. And so the fact that they're not here, maybe you shouldn't read too much into that, just to be fair to them. And I think as part of the CBR Accelerate process, there is going to be some very specific outreach and engagement of the providers.
Sometimes we like to gather the community first, do some education, provide some background. Providers get pretty defensive, and so that can really dominate a meeting like this. So we like to do a meeting without them first, just to, it's kind of like having a plan before you go into buy the car. You know, you want to be ready for and have your information handy.
Oh, one thing I'd like to, each year we do in January, do a strategic planning session. And this year, as we got to the end of the day, and we kind of took a straw poll of what are most important in our mind, goals that we should work on. Broadband development and economic development were the top two vote getters. And I think they go very much hand in hand. And so the encouraging part for me is we've been pretty successful over the years by when we write something down as our goal of meeting our objectives. So the board is committed to moving ahead and doing something. And so we're looking for people that will sit beside us and help guide us and happen that that can provide a much better service for our communities. I didn't mean to stop anybody's enthusiasm for saying anything.
This is Dustin from Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures. I just wanted to say that I'm super excited that there were so many people that showed up to the call today, and I think this just reinforces kind of our vision that we have the people by the table, and if we can kind of get us all focused around this mission, we can do some cool things. So I'm here today representing Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures, but I'm also a trustee for the Blandin Foundation. And so I think one of our visions is to really focus our energies around equity work. And so we're taking a look at that through the lens of the broadband program, and really focusing on kind of the counties that are the least connected, I think. And unfortunately, that's where we're at now in Pine County, along with tribes. So I think the Blandin Foundation is committed to being a partner and helping us kind of coalesce a vision, helping put together kind of the plan, and really dancing with us in Pine County. And I think I just think there's a lot of potential here, and like with everything that happened through COVID and kind of the impacts there, we have a really cool opportunity to rebuild stronger, rebuild better, and really show how this work can be done. So thank you all for showing up today. I'm super excited.
You know, it might be interesting to we have quite a number of school representatives here to talk about the challenges they face. You know, what percentage of your kids don't have internet service? How are they coping on slower internet service and so on?
Anybody? Rob or Andy?
Well, I could go. This is Bill Peel again from Willow River Area School.
Hi, Bill.
We had about, I would say, almost 25% of our students have limited or no internet service at home. When we were in full distance learning, it was a struggle. We provided hotspots for a lot of our students, but again, some of the hotspots didn't work because of their rural locations. Now that we're back 4 days a week, you know, we're a little better, but we still have challenges for our students out there. So any work that we can do to, you know, to expand the coverage for our internet would be greatly appreciated. So it's always a work in progress, but you know, we try to support our students as much as we can.
Yeah, this is Rob from Hinckley. You know, when we went into distance learning, our initial survey showed that about 80% of the parents felt that they had reliable internet. And when we got down to it, it was not able to maintain what you need to do for distance learning. So we've put out probably over 200 hotspots at this point, and that doesn't cover it either. So we obviously see the need, and I guess as my shameless plug, always looking to develop our areas. We have a lot of people that will develop our area and our schools. A lot of people that talk about working more from a rural area, and we have relatively cheap land compared to the cities. And if people could work remotely easier, I think that would bring us more population and more students in our schools.
I would just echo the sentiments of Rob and Bill. Same issues up here. We have hotspots going out like crazy. We have a digital navigator at school that tries to help them get connected. We've put more Wi-Fi hotspots in our parking lot for kids to be able to pull up and download assignments. You know, our families are trying to find ways to cope, but it's created a bigger gap between those, you know, the haves and the have-nots.
I also think it's really interesting that our schools probably are as well connected as any school in City High School and see a house that had really hardly any cell phone service until just recently. No internet service except the hotspot. And yet, when the kids walk into that high school, they are as connected. I mean, they got all of our schools have really, really great fiber service and great internet tools to use.
Well, Steve, I think you had something to do with that, and our partnership with ECMAC and the libraries and other groups. Our schools are really, they're pretty much world class in that area.
Well, I feel bad that we haven't been able to take that next step, and it's 2021.
Well, this is Dave Menke, and maybe it's just worth looking back. I don't think it was even 2 years ago that the county did a letter of support for a joint project up by Grindstone Lake with SCI. And they ran it was a pretty small project, but they did run a little bit of fiber, and they served the Osprey Wild Center. And I know during the pandemic, they did open up a drop-in center to give kids a place who didn't have internet at home to go. And in talking to Brian, I don't know, a few weeks ago, it sounds like their numbers weren't maybe as high as they would have hoped or as high as we would have expected. But I think that just underscores the need for broad availability of public Wi-Fi as well as we look to the home, right? Because many of us have been on the road or traveled or done stuff and needed a Wi-Fi connection. And I think maybe Leslie's on the call, but I know she has been working with the city of Pine City to try to expand Wi-Fi in their parks, which I think also could be a part of our exploration as study is how do we get Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi available more broadly.
Yeah. Hi, David. I am here. We did with our CARES Act, we attempted, we just didn't have enough time to get kind of the fixed wireless into each of our parks, and that would have been required to have a partnership with a neighboring property owner or other source of Wi-Fi. So we did partner with the library to extend it into Robinson Park, our downtown park, and we're working on that now. But it was a really easy fix, a really cheap project in the realm of internet and Wi-Fi and broadband. It's not going to be the speeds that Bill has presented to us as being acceptable, but it will provide some Wi-Fi in our downtown area for people visiting. Hopefully generate a little bit of economic development, people wanting to come and stop off the freeway and visit Pine City. bring some business to the doorsteps of our downtown businesses. But you know, they're outside of Pine County, but I know the city of North Branch did a lot of work too with their CARES Act funding to bring Wi-Fi throughout the whole city. So I mean, there's ways to do it. We just need to be open-minded, as Steve mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, and understand that yes, fiber is a ultimate goal, but there are other ways that we can get to people. As I sit in my home just west of Pine City, I have I did a speed test. I'm 8.8 right now on this meeting, which is why I'm on my cell phone. But you know, we got to do better. You know, I'm only 5 miles out of Pine City, so you know, we have to keep an open mind, and I think starting small and getting Wi-Fi in public spaces is a great step forward to build that momentum and the community buy-in on a big investment in the future.
This is Eileen Krupp. I'm also a rural resident. I'm east of Hinckley, about 8 miles. I'm a small business owner and a senior. And during the pandemic, of course, with no access to hospitals unless you had COVID, all of the visits were virtual, or I should say, probably about 90% of them were virtual. Well, most seniors don't have the ability to do this in the rural areas or don't know how to do it, but it's important to bring that broadband out here so that they can do those visits, because the health of the seniors and keeping them in their homes is really important right now. I think maintaining that ability to be in a place, because well, seniors don't want to be in a nursing home right now. And having a business in rural Pine County, right now I'm on a phone call and on the WebEx meeting, but in order to be able to speak, I have to do the phone, because it just doesn't, the speed isn't fast enough to do both.
You know, as we think about broadband as a substitute for other things, and you think about what is through Medicare and Medicaid, every time to transport older person in and around Pine County to a doctor's visit or to a hospital visit and so on, those can be thousands of dollars each. And so again, the idea that something is $10,000 per house for a 30-year asset, you can start to balance some of those things out. But of course, it's a question of who pays. And one of the things that a lot of communities try and do, if they have a plan for broadband, and LeSueur County did a great job during the CARES Act dollars, as well as Otter Tail counties, they both had plans in place and were able to put partnerships to work with providers to make some great things happen. I think LeSueur County built, I think, 30 miles of fiber optic in 2 months because they had a plan and they had some provider partnerships in place, and was a pretty impressive rollout of use of those dollars. So having that plan is really powerful.
Good morning again. It's Justin. I just wanted to make a few comments regarding the presentation. I think Bill, fantastic information, good rundown of the industry as it exists today. And I just wanted to tell a little bit about East Central Energy's experience in research and consideration of projects. We, a few years ago, looked into the 3 options of fixed wireless to the home, a hybrid solution where we would serve the more dense areas of our 62,000 membership with fiber, and then the remainder with fixed wireless. And then we looked at an entirely fixed wireless system. And the prices range anywhere from about $90 million to $250 million. And so not a small undertaking for an organization even like East Central Energy. And you know, there's 2 pieces of this in my opinion. There's the initial outlay and securing the funding and moving forward with it. And for East Central Energy, there frankly were some pretty good risks to our equity position. And obviously our primary objective is to serve electricity to our membership. And so, that was an initial consideration, and I'm confident we could have worked that out through either state or federal funding and things of that nature. And I'll just say as an aside, I'm a lifelong Pine County resident. I have 4 kids, 3 of which we're trying to do distance learning on 2 megabits per second speeds. So I got you beat, Leslie. And so I 100% agree with the both anecdotal and actual situation folks are dealing with, and I would never want to minimize that. I will say a few weeks ago we did get connected with Starlink on the beta test, and just yesterday Elon Musk tweeted that they're expecting speeds of over 300 megabits per second. And so, as I mentioned, there's this initial consideration of how do you secure funding, how do you go about building out the system and providing that service to people, considering take rates and those density issues that we talked about earlier with the Pine County map. But then there's that ongoing issue of competitive situations. And I think, Bill, your comments about electric cooperatives, and I know the analogy has been drawn to how electric cooperatives back in the 30s utilized federal funding to develop the electrical infrastructure that exists today for rural electric cooperatives. And it's a beautiful story. It's getting old, but it's a beautiful story. The difference today is the idea of innovation. We are seeing technologies developed that are drastically changing the way that we think about internet and how mobility plays into it, and things like Starlink and some of these other technologies really will, I think, transform the landscape of how those things are done. And so, from East Central Energy's perspective, we completely recognize and agree that there is a need, and it's a crisis really in many cases, of folks needing internet service. We also recognize our responsibility to be good financial stewards of our members' dollars and the equity that they have invested with us. And so we are happy to be a part of this conversation, as I mentioned, but we want to urge everyone involved to have their eyes wide open and be aware of the innovation that is coming and the technologies that could change the market fundamentally. So I just wanted to add that in. I think everything that's been said today is valid. I think there's some great considerations, and I really want to see particularly the children that are distance learning and maybe, again, who knows, doing more of that, and the folks that just are starving for good internet. So happy to be a part of this conversation, and thank you, Bill, for the great presentation.
Thanks, Justin. I'm reminded my colleague of mine from my past work experience calling me up and telling me that they're going to start building WiMAX towers in Little Falls, because they're going to build out their entire school cooperative, because it's right around the corner, and it's going to do everything that they could possibly think of. So I've been waiting for that for the last 14 years, but it never came. But I think the innovation that's coming now is different, because it's actually there and it's working, and it's not just working in downtown Memphis or some densely populated area. So I said it early on, we need to keep our eyes wide open. I do think I'm excited that I hope I can get at least 7 other people to sit down with us and go through this Accelerate program. It's a time commitment, but really that's what it is just time, and I got time. So I'm committed. If I can get 7 or more people to say they're committed, we will go through this Blend and Accelerate program. So Bill and David, could you explain a little bit more about what this whole program is?
Yes. So this is a 15-week program that requires about a 2 to 3 hour commitment per week. And our team has to be at least 8 members, but there is no upper limit. And I'm hopeful that we'd maybe get closer to maybe 10 or so, just to give us a broader perspective. And there is it's all, at this point, it's all remote, in that there would be like a video webinar that everyone would watch. And then on Fridays for most weeks, there would be a live interactive video training and conversation. There's 3 phases to it. There's the education piece, there is the information gathering piece, and then there is the analysis and next steps. And so the idea is it would culminate in late June or potentially July with a report out that we would make to the community with what our findings are and what recommendations there might be. And so far, I have heard from a few people who have expressed interest. And so I'm going to run over the list of folks that I've heard from, and that would be Eileen Krupp, Becky Schuler, Katie Overtoom, Josh Moore, Steve Holland, and Terry Lovegren. And I guess that's the list that I've got going so far. And so one outcome of today is to encourage some more of you folks who have those keen eyes that we've heard about. We need to be eyes wide open and thoughtful in this process. And so I guess if you think this is something you're interested, the application deadline is Friday. And so if I could either know on this call that, hey, you're interested, or if you could reach out to me by Wednesday or Thursday, that would be the time frame we're looking at. And the first event is scheduled already. It's March 17th from 1 to 3 p.m.
David, this is Becky Lori. If you think I'd be helpful or useful,
Becky, you're on the list. Congratulations.
I've been on in the past. I've been on. I think this is a good one to be on.
Hey, David, this is Dustin from MLCV. We're committed to be at the table. We're actually bringing on we're hiring a specific staff member to lead this initiative. So we want to make sure we're fully engaged and can bring all of our resources to the table.
Thank you.
That was a joke, what I said before, that I've been on like bad lists. So that was supposed to be a joke. Okay.
I got it, Becky. Anybody else?
David, if it's deemed appropriate for ECE to have representation there, we'd be happy to be at the table as well.
It'd be awesome, Justin.
Yeah, I was just going to say Justin should be on. And then he said it. This is going to be great.
It'd be nice if we could get somebody from the schools. I know you guys are all busy, but I think you're a huge partner in our endeavors.
This is Bill Peel from Old River. I would be honored to be on the committee.
Thanks, Bill.
Hi, David. This is Josh from Wellia Health. Our organization would be committed to having somebody on the committee as well.
Thank you. And for those organizations who are going to have somebody on the committee, we can just connect offline if you have a name. And if in the packet, there is a letter of interest that Blandon is looking for, just to have members express their commitment to the process. And so if you have access to the packet for this meeting, it's the last page in it, or if you need a template, just let me know. But if I could get those letters of interest by Thursday, I could get the application submitted on Friday.
I think we have enough to move ahead on, and if you people need to go home and think about it, get a hold of David, get on this list, and we'll move forward and gather information, and maybe even call this group back together after we have something that we might be able to present to you. But thank you for your interest. I think we can move the needle on broadband in Pine County. I guess one thing, if you're 84th in the state, maybe you don't have to move a lot to move, but I'm looking at moving the needle a lot. So thank you. David, do you have anything else that we need to take care of today?
No, I just want to thank everyone for joining the meeting today. If you're interested in Bill's slides, they are posted on the county website as well as the packet. And so feel free to go there and pick up any of the stats or maps that you might want to look more at. And one of the enumerated powers of this committee is going to be to reach out to all of you and ask for more help as we go down this road over the next several months.
Thank you all for coming. Glenn, enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you. Will do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Steve.
Bye-bye.